Throughout the centuries, people have looked to the stars to help them navigate across open oceans and featureless deserts, know when to plant and harvest, and preserve their myths and folklore. Ancient peoples used the appearance or disappearance of certain stars over the course of each year to mark the changing seasons. To make it easier to read the celestial calendar, they grouped the brighter stars into recognizable patterns or shapes, the constellations. Today, astronomers officially recognize 88 constellations covering the entire sky in the northern and southern hemispheres. Currently, 14 men and women, 9 birds, 2 insects, 19 land animals, 10 water creatures, 2 centaurs, 1 head of hair, a serpent, a dragon, a flying horse, a river, and 29 inanimate objects are represented in the night sky. The total comes to more than 88 because some constellations include more than one creature. It is important to realize that the great majority of star patterns bear little, if any, resemblance to the figures they are supposed to represent and whose name they bear. The ancient constellation makers probably meant for them to be symbolic, not literal, representations of their favorite animals or fabled heroes, a kind of celestial hall of fame. Our modern constellation system comes to us from the ancient Greeks. The oldest description of the constellations as we know them comes from a poem called Phenomena, written about 270 BC by the great Greek poet Aratus. However, it is clear from the poem that the constellations mentioned originated long before Aratus's time. No one is sure exactly where, when, or by whom they were invented, but it is thought they originated with the ancient Babylonians and Sumerians. From there, the tradition of the constellations somehow made its way to Egypt, where early Greek scholars first heard about the constellations and wrote about them. In 150 A.D., the Greek scientist Ptolemy published a book known by its Arabic name, the Almagest, which contained a summary of Greek astronomical knowledge. The book included a catalogue of 1,022 stars, with estimates of their brightness, arranged into 48 constellations. These 48 formed the basis for our modern constellation system. Over the years, astronomers have added constellations to fill in the gaps between Ptolemy's figures and map the uncharted regions of the sky in the southern hemisphere. At its first meeting in 1922, the International Astronomical Union, the IAU, astronomy's worldwide governing body, which is responsible, among other things, for assigning names to celestial objects, officially adopted the list of 88 constellations that we use today. Definitive boundaries between constellations, which extend out beyond the star figures, were set in 1930, so that every star, nebula, or galaxy, no matter how faint, now lies within the limits of one constellation. This means that for today's astronomer, constellations refer not so much to the patterns of stars, but to precisely defined areas of the sky. When an astronomer says, "I observed a star in Orion last night," she doesn't necessarily mean that the star was part of the ancient sky pattern of Orion the Hunter, but merely that the star can be found in that sector of the sky which also contains Orion. Nearly every culture on Earth has seen patterns in the stars, but not surprisingly, very few have seen the same patterns. Take, for example, the Big Dipper, perhaps the most recognizable star pattern in the sky. The Big Dipper is not actually a constellation itself, but is part of a larger pattern known to the Greeks as Ursa Major, the Great Bear. The 7 stars of the Big Dipper have inspired many stories, perhaps because they are bright and located so near the North Celestial Pole, the point around which the stars rotate during the course of a night. But not everyone calls it a dipper. The British call it a plough. In southern France, it's a saucepan. To the ancient Maya, it was a mythological parrot named Seven Macaw. The ancient Chinese thought of it as a special chariot for the Emperor of the Heavens, or some other celestial bureaucrat. For the Micmac Indians of Canada's maritime provinces, along with several other North American Indian tribes, the bull of the Big Dipper was a bear, and the stars in the handle represented hunters tracking the bear. and in the 19th century the Big Dipper became a symbol of freedom for runaway slaves who followed the drinking gourd to the northern states. The ancient Greek tradition was to name stars by the position within a constellation. For example, Ptolemy refers to one star by the description, the reddish one on the southern eye, a star we now know as Aldebaran in the constellation of Taurus, the bull. But these descriptions could get quite involved. Ptolemy refers to another star in the obsolete constellation of Argo the boat as the northernmost of two stars close together over the little shield in the poop. A bit cumbersome if you're trying to learn the names of many stars. When al-Sufi, one of the greatest Arabic astronomers, published his own version of Ptolemy's Almagest in the 10th century, he introduced many individual star names. For centuries, Bedouin Arabs had given names to bright stars. For example, Aldebaran and Betelgeuse, since they regarded single stars as representing people and animals. Many of the original meanings of the names had been forgotten even in al-Sufi's time, but some were direct translations of Ptolemy's descriptions. For example, the star named Fomalhaut in the constellation of Pisces comes from the Arabic for mouth of the southern fish, which is how Ptolemy described it in the Almagest. After the 10th century, the works of Ptolemy and others were reintroduced into Europe by the Islamic Arabs, and the Greek books were translated from Arabic into Latin, the scientific language of the day. Thus we know Ptolemy's work from its Arabic translation, the Almagest not by its original Greek title. And it explains why we have a system of Greek constellations with Latin titles containing stars with Arabic names. With few exceptions, the stars in a constellation have no connection with one another. They are actually at very different distances from the sun. Chance alignments of stars have created the patterns we see in the sky. These alignments are not permanent, however. The patterns the stars form look much the same today as they did when the constellations were first named nearly 3,000 years ago. Indeed, the stars seem almost fixed in place. But the stars are all moving relative to the sun and each other, most with speeds of many kilometers per second. Because they are so very far away, it will take thousands of lifetimes to see significant changes in the star patterns. But over time they will change. As a result of the motions of the stars within it, for example, the handle of the Big Dipper will, in about 50,000 years, appear significantly more bent than it is today. We will no doubt keep the same names for the constellations, even if the stars change their positions. Constellations are, after all, products of human imagination, not nature.